One, two, three. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops.
Yes, so many cops are on the tick. What do you expect when they use tear gas and tanks? Whether in a car or on a horse, cops don't mind using excessive force.
Bad cops, bad cops. What you gonna do? Bad cops, bad cops. What you gonna do? Bad cops, bad cops. What you gonna do? Bad cops, bad cops.
This is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Yeah.
So once again, shout out to Twitch and Facebook and everyone watching on the TVs. Money for nothing, your chicks for free. So tell us about this crazy thing that's happening in Alabama right now with these police. I'm gonna pull this article up so you can lead this out because this story is too outrageous for me.
So first of all, I have to give the credit where the credit is due. There is a lawyer on YouTube, Steve Lato, I believe his name is. And I've gotten kind of sucked down the rabbit hole of a lot of the very interesting legal stories that he has, kind of reported on. He's I think he's an attorney somewhere, I think in Michigan. And he basically just explains a lot of the legal stuff that is going on. So when I saw this story, I was just like, damn, this is the mother of all bad cop segments. Apparently, in this town in Alabama, they are having, like, if you look at the statistics of what they're pulling in as far as revenue for the state, they are seizing more cars every year than people who can buy cars in their town. So, when on the outside of the article, they're talking about long lines and really crazy parking conditions for this, super small municipality called Brookside.
Remember we heard this story before Michael Brown was killed. We heard this story in Ferguson. There were this cops just walking around giving black people tickets for just looking at them wrong. That's what's happening in Ferguson. It was making money off of this part of this town. So this is a thing that, yeah.
So it says in a 2-year period between 2018 and 2020, Brookside revenues from fines and forfeitures soared to more than 640%, and now make up half of the city's total income. The town of 1,253, just north of Birmingham, reported just 55 serious crimes to the state in 55? The entire 8-year period from 2011 to 2018. God. Right? But here's the funny thing. The police, the chief there is saying, well, that's not actually a real number. We underreported the crimes. There's been way more than that, and now we have every reason to start hiring more cops. So, by 2020, Brookside made more misdemeanor arrests than it has residents, and went from towing 50 vehicles in 2018 to 789 in 2020, each carrying fines. That is a 1,500% increase, with 1.7 tows for every household in town. So you might be thinking, it's a small place. How the fuck is that happening? So what they're doing is that they're going on to Interstate 22, and they're going outside their own jurisdiction. Like, they go outside of the town's borders, and they're just going on the highway, just pulling over whoever the fuck they want.
Oh my God! Look at this chart. Look at this chart this chart visually visualizes. It visualizes exactly this craziness, like the taxes, licensing permits, other revenues, taxes. Compare the taxes and fines and furnitures. Is like the red is huge. The red is like a huge block. For
the streets were run red with blood. That is what we are seeing here. So The director of Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice says Brookside is a poster child for policing for profit. Okay, they're like in some of these cases, they are just making up laws. Okay, so there is an example that I thought that was like really crazy. I may have to. Oh wait! Before we even get there, when you're talking about what Mike Jones, who is the Brookside police chief, what he has to say, he thinks this is a positive story. Okay. Jones said crime when he took over was higher than it appeared from the numbers. The town reported, from the state. He said response times were long because Brookside often had to rely on the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department for service. He said he'd like to see even more growth in revenue from fines and forfeitures. He didn't say anything about making people safer.
Look at this
He
chart.
wanted to see more growth in revenue.
So even more. So mind you, this is what makes this even more disgusting to me, that 2020 is the middle of a pandemic. And these
Which means you have less cars on the road.
These gobbling motherfuckers are making almost 50% of their revenue is from harassing people in the middle of a pandemic. So
the police chief says, I see a 600% increase. That's a failure. If you had more officers and more productivity, you'd have more. I think it could have been more.
So I want to play this clip from CNN so people can see this town, see how small this town is, and you be a judge of how 50% of the revenue is people being stopped and people being harassed in the streets. And you
from people that don't live in Brookside, pulled over by Brookside officers outside of Brookside.
So I want to play this clip for you guys so you guys can get the visual of this town.
Less than 30 minutes north of Birmingham sits the small town of Brookside, Alabama. It's a former mining town with no stoplights, no retail stores other than the Dollar General, and no major crimes. A stretch of Interstate 22 runs directly through Brookside, and the town has a lot of cops to police it. Brookside is only about 3 miles long and has just over 1,200 residents.
But the police here, they
3 miles.
at least 3 SWAT vehicles.
Yo!
They also have a tank.
What the fuck?
According to the local media outlet AL.com, between 2018 and 2020, under Brookside Police Chief Mike Jones, income from fees and forfeitures increased by 640%. The outlet says the money amounts to half of the town's total income, or roughly $1.2 million.
So that you feel like they tried to ruin your name?
Yes, they did. They did.
Pastor Vincent Witt says he is one of the countless victims of Brookside's alleged policing for profit. In 2019, he says he was unjustly pulled over for having temporary plates on his brand new car. He's filed a federal lawsuit against the town of Brookside for defamation of character and filing false charges.
They're policing for real.
So it's illegal to have a temporary plate on a brand new car?
Bogus charges.
24-year-old college student Jory Jones said her interaction with Brookside police felt like a shakedown. After being pulled over for driving without her lights just before dusk, Jones says her car was impounded and she was left stranded on the side of the road. Jones's attorney says,
Mind you, look, so far a black man, so far a black woman. We keep on going.
She will also sue the police department.
Even though I was pulled over, I was following the laws of the road.
The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says for years there's been a slew of complaints against the Brookside Police Department. This week, Police Chief Mike Jones suddenly resigned.
Oh,
Hey there.
shit.
My name is Nick Valencia.
We went to Brookside to try to talk to who's in charge now,
So the town of Brookside does not have a current police chief?
but we're told we didn't have a new chief.
Now they got dip with the money. Get the fuck out of here. He dipped with the gold cube pretty much.
The cube.
Brookside Police then gave us this statement. This will confirm that Mike Jones resigned as the police chief for the town of...
So that's when you know he did nothing wrong, because he resigned suddenly. You know he did everything great. He's a great chief if he just disappears after such controversy. You know,
Yo,
that's a
I'm
big
sorry. Does that look like somebody who voted for Joe Biden? Look at his face. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
I mean, look at the cryon.
Joe
Look at
Biden's
it.
pretty bad, but I'm just saying.
This is over policing trumped up charges, but also you have to realize that I want people to realize that Biden's actually giving more money than Trump has ever gave to the cops ever. Like Biden is like dumping money on police departments right now, way more than
and
Trump
the military.
So people are just sleeping because he's a Democrat. So you
Mm-hmm.
know he's giving cops more tanks, more robot dogs. He's doing that right now. So
More homeless sniffing robots.
Of Brookside. Since this involves a personnel matter, the town has no further comment. Brookside's mayor was in the office, but he declined our request for an interview. Responding to the allegations of predatory policing,
We don't trust CNN around here.
Saying, to investigate and address the issues raised by recent news accounts of our police department, the town of Brookside requested the Alabama Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission perform a compliance audit of the Brookside Police Department and officers. The town continues to investigate these issues and will take any up.
I mean, we're not slow. We see the money that you spent. You see the money that you have. You really have tanks and fucking Hummers outside of your fucking police department. And you're gonna
We've investigated ourselves and determined we've done nothing wrong.
You're gonna say, "Oh, we're not really sure what's going on. We got to investigate because all these tanks and like fucking helicopters we have now for a town that's like 3 miles long." Get the fuck out of here,
appropriate action that may be determined necessary. Leah Nelson with the social justice nonprofit Alabama Appleseed says Alabama doesn't generate enough revenue from taxation, so public policy incentivizes cities and counties to get that revenue another way.
And the path of least resistance is very often ticketing people for low-level offenses.
Brookside residents wonder if these old tactics will continue under a new chief.
So we see what happens. This is a story that we have to keep following and see if Brookside's going to like pull people over in New York City. You can see Brookside cop cars in New York City pulling people over because Eric Adams wants that to happen. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen next. So we have comments. We have comments on Facebook and Twitch actually of people saying there's similar things happening in other places.
Yeah, I mean this happening on my block where I noticed that there's a trap near a stop sign near where I live, and at the end of the month, you will see somebody. If you stop and you sit by the side of the road, like every 5 minutes, they're pulling somebody over for rolling through the stop sign.
You know, my stress level was going down because I'm not in a city covered with red cameras, with traffic cameras. You know, this like you go over. It's a 25 miles an hour. You go 33 miles an hour. You go 31 miles an hour. You're getting a fucking ticket. It's not like I'm like going 50 miles an hour. Not like I'm going like 100 miles an hour. You go 33 on a Sunday morning when no one's on the fucking road, you get a ticket.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to tell the story of Sandra Jo Harris. This story blew me away. This was the story that I was just like, you know what? We're going to have to talk about this on the show next week, but Sandra Jo Harris, a 52-year-old grandmother, claims in a lawsuit she pulled off I-22 at Cherry Avenue on January 8th, 2020, as she often did when she went to visit her daughter. It was nearing dusk. And as she drove into the neighborhood, she didn't think much about the unmarked black SUV with tinted windows on the side of the road. She turned on her lights, according to her lawsuit, because of the approaching darkness. But when she did, the unmarked SUV pulled into the street, crossed the center line, and sped toward her, blue lights flashing. She was not speeding or breaking the law, she argued in the suit. She pulled to the side of the road as the SUV pulled behind her, and a wrecker simultaneously parked nearby. It frightened her and led to more trouble. Officers dressed in completely dark, unmarked uniforms approached her, and one accused her of flickering her lights to warn others of their presence. What? Unsure what was happening, Harris dialed 911, but an officer grabbed the phone and threw it to the ground, breaking it. Police put her in a patrol car and searched her vehicle for drugs. So, she ends up with some health issues. They charged her with flickering her lights or nuisance of casting lights from motor vehicle on real property at night. I've not even heard of that shit before.
I get tickets. I get tickets just to wrap this up. I get tickets for having a plastic cover over my license plate. but you can see the license
I think
plate.
that is illegal, though.
No, but you walk into a store and buy it, and like it's pretty much anywhere in this country you can drive around with a plastic covering your license plate.
Yeah, that's not a chance I would take. But she said that she was also charged with resisting arrest because she tightened her arm muscles while getting handcuffed.
So you can get tickets for things you don't even know you realize you can get tickets for, even though you can walk into a store.
Some of this shit's just made the fuck up. We're not even talking about obscure laws on the books. We're talking about just some shit that sounded that they wrote it on a piece of paper to make it sound official sounding, to then get you in the court, and so that they could take your money, take your vehicle.
So this is a wild bad cops. Hopefully people follow this, keep following the story, because right now it doesn't have a police chief. It just has road cops doing crazy shit at the moment. So hopefully people follow the story in Brookside, Alabama, and also follow the story of Amir Locke, which is like crazy story. Hopefully someone gets held accountable for shooting a guy just waking up. But we saw with Breonna Taylor that wasn't the case. So we have to see what happens with Minneapolis. So that's Bad Cops. You can follow Black Power Magical on Twitter, Twitch. Shout out to Facebook for tuning in and chatting with us. And then Dr. Regis, he's live talking shit and playing games on Discord, Twitch, YouTube, all the different platforms. And that's a really wild, brazy Bad Cops segment.